Rain clung to the oak leaves as Caleb Rowan rolled to a stop beside the porch. The light above the door burned a tired yellow. Uncle Roy leaned on the rail, Tingon sallow, eyes too awake. "Your land saved me," Roy said. "You weren't here. I handled it." Caleb set his suitcase on the mat and studied him. Nicotine fingers, jittering knee, the pale groove where his gold ring should have been. He let the road noise leave his bones and answered with a sound almost like a laugh. Roy stiffened. "What's funny?" "Coffee," Caleb said. "Then we look at the papers." Inside, the house smelled of dust and lemon oil. He filled the kettle. Roy prowled the kitchen like a cat that had found a door half open. "Buyers wired," Roy said. "Clean folks. Cash. You'll thank me when you see the numbers." Caleb watched the flame and the clock above the sink. In the window, their reflections doubled over the dark. When? Yesterday. Title company called it the smoothest file in the county. The kettle hissed. Caleb poured. He pictured aluminum stake tags at the South Ridge, 17B SR, where a survey crew had claimed they were just checking ditches. He remembered his own morning at the courthouse before he drove east, the trust document on the counter, the clerk's stamp sealing it shut. Roy took the mug and paced. "You're tight with pennies," he said, brittle, "but you'll loosen when you see the wire." "What power of attorney did you use?" Caleb asked. Roy blinked. "Old paper. Grandpa had a thing. I updated the date." Caleb stirred sugar and recalled the email that reached him at a seafood shack. "Urgent. POA appears non-standard." His lawyer's reply, decline, fraud suspected. He had eaten his fish cold. After coffee, he said, "We go to the county. Make sure nobody boxes you into a corner." Relief flashed across Roy's face so quickly it almost read as triumph. "Smart." Tied up with a bow. They drank. The kitchen ticked. A car ghosted past on damp gravel. "You remember when we took down that dead ash by the creek?" Roy said. "You were 16. I told you if you cut on the wrong side, the whole thing can pivot and crush you." "I remember," Caleb said. "Well," Roy said, smiling faintly, "I cut on the right side today." Caleb set his cup down. "We'll see which way it falls." He pulled a file box from the pantry shelf. Receipts, parcel numbers, tax maps, order like a fence line. He slid on his jacket and stepped onto the porch. Mist made the yard lights bloom. Roy followed, keys in hand, shoulders tipped forward as if leaning into a wind only he could feel. At the truck, Roy paused. "You mad?" he asked, trying for casual. The tremor made it a plea. "I'm awake," Caleb said. "That's better." They drove with the windows cracked, damp air washing the cab. Past orchard ladders stacked like ribs, past the stone fence their grandfather had laid, past the South Ridge where Roy's bungalow crouched in darkness. The road to town uncoiled. At the first stop sign, Roy drummed the wheel. "You know," he said, "I did this for us." Caleb watched the mirror, where their faces floated over the truck bed. "Then you won't mind proving it," he said. They rolled on, toward fluorescents and stamps, and whatever waited behind a plexiglass window. Behind them, the porch light kept burning, a small patient star over the door. The county building hummed with stale fluorescence. The linoleum floor bore 1,000 scuffs, and the air smelled faintly of ink and damp coats. Caleb and Roy pushed through the glass doors, their footsteps echoing. At the recorder's counter, Ms. Alvarez looked up. She was brisk but kind, with silver hair pinned back and glasses low on her nose. "Parcel number?" she asked. Caleb gave it. Roy shifted, scratching his neck, eyes darting across the office as if searching for an exit. Ms. Alvarez typed, her nails tapping steadily. A printer word. She slid out a stack of papers, stamped in heavy red ink. She turned the monitor so they could both see a county parcel map, pale green lines tracing fields and creek. "There was an attempted transfer of parcel 17A, she said, claimed under a power of attorney." Her eyes flicked to Roy, then back to the screen. "Rejected. Invalid." Roy's mouth opened. "That's impossible. They told me." Ms. Alvarez tapped another document, her voice even. "As of last week, 17A is held in an irrevocable conservation trust. Any transfer requires 2 trustee signatures. We had one. The other was missing. Filing void. Caleb felt a quiet current move through him. The trust had worked. Roy sputtered, his voice cracking. No. I sold his farm. I signed. Ms. Alvarez's gaze stayed steady. She slid forward a second page. But we did record a trustee's deed of sale. Parcel 17B. She pointed at the gray-shaded block on the map. Foreclosure under deed of trust. Executed 8 days ago. Silence stretched. Roy stared at the paper, his face draining. That's mine, he whispered. The office door swung open. A tall man in a dark jacket stepped inside. Nick, eyes sharp, posture controlled. Behind him came a younger buyer's agent, folders tucked under his arm. Nick's voice was polite, but clipped. We're here for keys. Parcel 17B. Roy's knees seemed to weaken. Wait, no. This isn't right. It was supposed to be. He broke off, staring at Caleb. Caleb finally spoke, voice steady. The farm you sold was yours. The words hung in the air like a verdict. Nick's expression didn't shift. The buyer's agent nodded, professional and detached. We'll need possession confirmed. Friday works. Roy stumbled back a step. You don't understand. I thought I was saving us. Those men. If I didn't move quick. Ms. Alvarez closed the file calmly. The record stands, Mr. Rowan. 17B is no longer yours. Caleb took the certified copy she offered. The red rejected stamp burned bright on one, the foreclosure deed final on the other. Roy turned to him, eyes wide, voice hoarse. You knew. You planned this. Caleb met his gaze, his own face unreadable. I planned to protect what was ours. What you risked wasn't yours to sell. The room seemed smaller now, walls pressing in. Roy sagged against the counter, breath coming short. Nick checked his watch. Friday, he repeated. Keys. He turned, the buyer's agent following. Their exit left a vacuum behind them, heavy and cold. Roy's hands trembled as he gathered the useless papers. It was supposed to work, he muttered. They said it would fix everything. Caleb slipped the documents into his folder, every motion careful, deliberate. It fixed something, he said quietly, just not the way you thought. They stepped back into the damp afternoon. The sky was low, the air thick with the scent of wet asphalt. Roy hunched his shoulders, smaller now, his triumph gone. Caleb walked beside him, the silence between them sharp as broken glass. Neither spoke on the ride back. The farmhouse waited, porch lights still glowing, as if it knew what had shifted. The drive home was silent but thick, every mile pressing down on Roy like another weight across his chest. He kept his eyes fixed on the road, but his hands shook against the steering wheel. Caleb sat beside him, calm, almost too calm, watching the fence line slide by as though measuring what still belonged and what was already gone. When they turned into the gravel drive, the farmhouse looked unchanged, porch light glowing, windows steady, but the air felt different. Roy killed the engine, sat slumped forward and muttered, "Wasn't supposed to be like this." Caleb gathered the file box from the back seat. "It was always going to be like this," he said evenly. "You just didn't see it." Inside, the kitchen smelled faintly of damp coats and old coffee. Roy dropped into a chair, shoulders sagging. He rubbed his temples with trembling fingers. I thought I could sell it, pay the debt by time. Then I'd fix things. Put it back somehow. You'd thank me." Caleb set the stamped papers on the table between them, the red ink bright as blood. "You weren't saving anyone but yourself." Roy's eyes glistened. "You think I wanted this? You think I liked signing away my house? That bungalow. Your aunt's flowers still grow by the porch. I raised you there half the time." Caleb's jaw tightened. "And you gambled it into the ground." For a long moment, only the ticking clock filled the room. Then Roy leaned forward, voice breaking. "I had no choice, Caleb. They would have come after me. After us. You don't know what those men are like." "I know what greed looks like," Caleb answered. "I saw it in your eyes long before today." Roy shoved back his chair and stood. "Don't preach to me. I carried this family when your daddy died. I fed you, drove you to ball games. I kept this place alive." Caleb rose too, his tone low but unyielding. "You kept it alive until you started selling pieces of it for another night at the tables. You traded legacy for chips." The words hit like stones. Roy's face twisted with shame and anger. He sank back down, head in his hands. I thought I was smarter than the cards. I thought I could win back what I lost. Caleb looked at him. This man who had once been his hero, now unraveling in front of him. For a moment, compassion flickered. But it hardened again when he remembered the SUV at the gate, the fake papers, the arrogance in Roy's voice when he first said, "Your land saved me." "You'll stay here tonight," Caleb said finally, his voice measured. "Guest room upstairs. Tomorrow, we start figuring out what 30 days looks like." Roy lifted his head. 30 days? What's that supposed to mean? "It means you don't get to gamble with my farm again," Caleb replied. "You have 1 month under this roof. After that, you leave." Roy stared at him, wounded, almost childlike. "You'd throw me out?" "I'm giving you a chance," Caleb said. "What you do with it is up to you." Silence spread heavy between them. Rain tapped against the window. Roy's face was a mask of disbelief, but underneath it flickered the faintest spark of fear. Upstairs, the guest room sat empty, bed neatly made, curtains pulled back to the orchard. Roy climbed the steps slowly, as though each creak judged him. Caleb stayed downstairs, collecting the papers, filing them neatly in his box. The farmhouse settled for the night, but the fracture between them had widened into something that couldn't be patched by blood or memory. Night settled heavy over the farm, clouds pressing low until the world felt smaller, closed in. Caleb sat at the kitchen table with the ledger open, columns of numbers steady under the lamplight. Upstairs, the floor creaked as Roy paced the guest room, his shadow dragging across the curtains. Headlights cut across the yard. A car slowed at the gate and lingered. Caleb noticed the glow sweep the wall, steady and deliberate. He closed the ledger, rose, and stepped onto the porch. The sedan idled just beyond the fence line, its lights low. The driver's window slid down, and Nick's sharp profile appeared, cigarette glowing between his fingers. "Evening," he said smoothly. Roy's silhouette filled the guest room window above, frozen in the dim light. Caleb kept his tone calm. "What do you want?" Nick tapped ash into the damp gravel. "Parcel 17B is ours. Keys on Friday. No problem there. But debts aren't square just because dirt changed hands." He looked past Caleb to the upstairs light. "Your uncle still owes." Roy's voice burst from above, cracked with panic. "I gave you the house. You said that would cover it." Nick's eyes lifted cold. "House covered what the bank held. My side's separate. You know the difference." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Then your business is with him. Not this land. Not me." Nick smiled faintly, teeth bright in the dark. "Fair enough. Just a visit. Friendly reminder." He flicked the cigarette into the wet grass and rolled the window up. The sedan eased down the road, tail lights glowing like embers before fading into the night. The house was silent until Roy stumbled down the stairs, his face pale, hands trembling. "He'll come back. They always come back. You don't know these men, Caleb." Caleb closed the door and turned the lock. "Then you go to them with receipts, not promises. No more dragging this farm into it." Roy shook his head violently, pacing. "You don't get it. I can't pay them. Without the bungalow, without—" He broke off, choking on the words. "They'll come for me." "They came tonight," Caleb said, voice flat. "And they left when they realized there was nothing more to take." Roy's chest heaved, his eyes searching Caleb's face. "You think you're safe because of that trust. But they don't care about papers. They care about blood." For a long moment, Caleb said nothing. The rain picked up, tapping harder against the windows, a steady drumbeat. Finally, he answered, "Then you've got 30 days to figure out how to keep yours." Roy's mouth opened, then closed again, the fight draining out of him. He staggered to the chair, dropped into it, and buried his face in his hands. Caleb returned to the ledger, but his pen hovered above the page. He wasn't writing numbers anymore. He was measuring the weight of silence, of history, of the storm his uncle had dragged to their doorstep. Upstairs, the guest room light flickered once, then went dark. The farmhouse seemed to breathe, walls shifting as if it too knew something had changed. For the first time since coming home, Caleb felt the edge of real danger press against him. Not from Roy's schemes, not from forged papers, but from the kind of men who didn't ask twice. The morning broke gray and heavy. fog sliding low over the pasture. Caleb stood by the barn, checking the fence line where dew clung like silver beads. From the house, he heard the back door slam and Roy's uneven footsteps crunching gravel. Roy moved quickly, jacket pulled tight, a duffel slung over his shoulder. His eyes darted everywhere but at Caleb. "Where are you going?" Caleb asked, voice steady. Roy froze, the duffel strap digging into his shoulder. "Town. Just town. Gonna talk to some people. Straighten things out." Caleb wiped his hands on his jeans. "Which people?" Roy's jaw twitched. "The only ones who matter. I can't sit around waiting for them to show up here again. I'll make it right." "You mean Nick?" Caleb said flatly. Roy shifted, uneasy. "They're not unreasonable. If I show good faith, they'll give me time." Caleb stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "And what's good faith this time? More fake papers? Another promise on land you don't own?" Roy's face reddened. "Don't talk to me like I'm some fool. I know what I'm doing." "You knew last time too," Caleb said. "Look where that ended." For a moment, silence stretched between them, the fog wrapping around like a wall. Roy's shoulders sagged. He whispered, "I can't lose everything, Caleb." "You already did," Caleb replied. Roy flinched as though struck. Then, without another word, he turned and kept walking down the drive. Caleb let him go. He knew chasing him would only feed the fire. Still, unease gnawed at his gut. Hours later, the phone rang. It was Earl from the feed store. "Saw your uncle in town," he said carefully. "Looked rough. He was at Latchkey Lounge. That's no place for fixing things." Caleb closed his eyes. He could picture it. The dim backroom, smoke hanging thick, poker table scarred by years of desperation. Roy sitting there, trying to barter dignity for time. When Roy finally returned near dusk, he stumbled through the door, face drawn, eyes bloodshot. The duffel was gone. "What did you trade?" Caleb asked quietly. Roy dropped into a chair, rubbing his forehead. "Just things. A few heirlooms. Pawn for cash. Showed Nick I was serious." Caleb's stomach turned. "Heirlooms? What heirlooms?" Roy avoided his eyes. "Your grandfather's tools. The watch your father left you. Some bonds I found in the desk." Caleb's hands clenched at his sides. "You went to my desk?" "I had to," Roy said desperately. "They would have broken me right there if I didn't show something. This way I bought us time." "You didn't buy time," Caleb said, voice low but burning. "You sold what wasn't yours." Again, Roy's voice cracked. "I'm trying, Caleb. You don't understand. These men don't forget. If I don't keep feeding them, they'll come here again." Caleb's eyes hardened. "And if they do, they'll find me waiting. Not papers. Not pawn slips. Me." Roy sagged, tears welling. "You let them kill me then?" "No," Caleb said, his voice like steel. "I'll make sure you live long enough to face what you've done." The clock ticked loud in the silence that followed. Outside, the fog lifted, revealing the ridge where Roy's bungalow once stood, now belonging to someone else. Caleb turned away, filing the betrayal alongside all the others. Roy had crossed another line, and there would be no easy return. The next morning broke sharp and cold. Caleb woke early, but the house already carried the sour smell of stale whiskey and regret. Roy sat slumped at the table, a coffee cup untouched in front of him. His eyes were rimmed red, hands twitching as if still shuffling phantom cards. Caleb poured his own cup and stood across from him. "What did you pawn them?" Roy rubbed his face. "Does it matter? They're just things. Tools, a watch, stuff gathering dust." Caleb's voice cut firm. "Where?" Roy hesitated, then muttered, "Old Mill Pawn, down by the river." Caleb left his coffee cooling on the counter and drove into town. Old Mill Pawn crouched on the corner like a forgotten tooth, windows barred, neon sign buzzing faintly. Inside, glass cases held guitars, chainsaws, and rows of rings that glittered under flickering light. Behind the counter, a man in a denim jacket leaned back in his chair, chewing a toothpick. He looked up when Caleb entered. "You Roy's boy." "I'm his nephew." Caleb set his shoulders. "He brought in heirlooms yesterday. I want them back." The man smirked. "Can't just undo a deal." He signed the slips. Caleb's jaw tightened. "What did he give you?" The man reached under the counter, pulling a tray. Inside lay the worn handle of his grandfather's hammer, the brass watch engraved with his father's initials, and a sealed envelope marked in Caleb's father's handwriting. Caleb froze. He had never seen that envelope before. The pawnbroker tilted his head. Didn't open it. Figured sealed stuff fetches more if left alone. Caleb's chest tightened. He slid cash across the counter, more than the items were worth. The man counted slowly, then pushed the tray forward. "Generous nephew," he said. Outside, Caleb sat in the truck, rain pattering on the windshield. He turned the envelope over in his hands. The handwriting was unmistakable, his father's looping letters, faded but strong. He opened it carefully. Inside was a folded letter and a single deed paper. The letter read in his father's voice, words written years before. "If you're reading this, Caleb, it means Roy couldn't be trusted with the land. I've transferred backup rights to the trust we spoke about. Protect the farm. It's yours to guard." Caleb's throat tightened. His father had seen this coming, had left a safeguard hidden among heirlooms Roy barely noticed. By the time he returned home, Roy was pacing the kitchen, wild-eyed. "Where'd you go?" he demanded. "Pawn shop," Caleb said evenly. He set the hammer, watch, and envelope on the table. "I bought back what you threw away." Roy's face flushed. "You had no right." "No," Caleb cut him off sharply. "You had no right. These weren't yours to sell." He tapped the envelope. "And this proves it. Dad knew you. He knew you'd risk everything. He left this for me." Roy's eyes flickered to the deed, then back to Caleb. "That's just paper. You think that'll stop men like Nick?" Caleb's gaze was steady. "It'll stop you. And that's where it starts." Roy staggered back, his chest heaving. "You think you're so righteous. But when they come again, no paper will keep them off this land." Caleb held the watch in his palm. It's ticking faint but steady, like a heartbeat bridging past and present. "Then let them come. They'll find out what blood runs this farm." Roy's mouth worked soundlessly before he turned away, shoulders bent. Upstairs, the guest room door slammed. Caleb stood alone in the kitchen, the envelope spread before him. His father's foresight had reached across the years to hand him a weapon and a warning. The next days unfolded with a brittle quiet. Caleb worked the orchard, fixed the south fence, and tried to keep the rhythm of the farm steady. But upstairs, Roy was unraveling. His footsteps thudded late into the night, his muttered curses carrying through thin walls. Sleep-deprived, jittery, he prowled the house like a man pacing the edge of a cliff. On the third night, Caleb heard the creak of the back door. He rose from his bed and stepped into the hall, catching a glimpse of Roy slipping out into the dark, jacket pulled tight, face set with grim resolve. Caleb followed at a distance. Roy cut across the pasture, boots sinking in damp grass, until he reached the dirt road. A car waited there, black sedan, engine running, headlights off. Nick leaned against the hood, cigarette glowing faintly. Two other men stood nearby, their silhouettes sharp against the night. Roy approached, shoulders hunched, hands empty. "You shouldn't be here," Caleb called from the shadows. Roy whipped around, panic flashing in his eyes. "Go back inside, Caleb. This isn't your fight." Nick exhaled smoke, gaze sliding toward Caleb. Family loyalty. Admirable. Misplaced, though. Caleb stepped closer. "This land's under trust. You've taken what's yours and nothing more. You don't get another inch." Nick flicked ash, unbothered. "This isn't about dirt anymore. Your uncle promised us more. Time. Collateral. We don't walk away on half measures." Roy's voice cracked. "I can get you more time. I swear. Just don't press him. He doesn't deserve it." One of the men chuckled. "Doesn't work that way, old man." Caleb's eyes hardened. "Then it ends tonight. He has nothing left to give. Not land. Not heirlooms. Not promises." Nick studied him, the quiet authority in his voice. He glanced back at Roy, shaking his head. "You put us in a bad spot. Lied about what you had. That's not a debt. It's a betrayal." Roy sagged, desperation spilling from him. "I was trying to fix it. Just one more deal, one more hand, and I could have lost again." Caleb cut in, his voice like stone. Silence fell heavy. The two men shifted, restless. Nick finally dropped the cigarette, grinding it into the dirt. "We've got no use for a man who can't pay. But you," he looked at Caleb, eyes narrowing. "You've got backbone. Consider this your warning. Keep on a leash. Next time, we don't knock. The sedan's doors slammed. Gravel spit as it pulled away, taillights burning red until they vanished. Roy crumpled to his knees in the road, shoulders heaving. You don't know what they'll do, he whispered. Caleb looked down at him. Anger and pity knotted together. I know what you'll do if I don't stop you. That's enough. He hauled Roy to his feet and half-dragged him back to the farmhouse. Inside, the kitchen light pooled across the table, catching the edges of the envelope Caleb had retrieved days earlier. The letter from his father sat there like a quiet judgment. Roy's eyes landed on it, and he flinched. He never trusted me, he muttered. Not even then. Caleb's voice was cold. He trusted me to protect this place. And I will, even if it means protecting it from you. Roy sank into a chair, face buried in his hands. Caleb stood by the window, staring out at the dark road where red taillights had disappeared. He knew Nick's warning was no bluff. The farm wasn't just under threat from papers and pawns anymore. The danger was flesh and blood, and it had already marked their door. The farm woke uneasy the next morning. Caleb moved through chores with steady hands, but his eyes kept scanning the tree line, the gravel road, the distant ridge where Roy's bungalow once stood. Danger felt near, like thunder still beyond the horizon, but closing fast. Roy hardly left the kitchen. He sat with his head in his hands, muttering half-formed apologies to ghosts that no longer listened. At times he jolted upright, insisting he had a plan, then collapsed again when no plan appeared. By late afternoon, a rumble of engines carried across the pasture. 2 trucks rolled up the drive, dust trailing behind them. Caleb wiped his hands on his jeans, stepping onto the porch. Roy stumbled to the window, face draining of color. Nick stepped out of the first truck, flanked by 2 men. They moved with the casual confidence of people who owned fear. The second truck stayed running, another man behind the wheel. Afternoon, Nick called. His voice was almost friendly, but the weight beneath it was sharp. We said we'd be back. Consider this a check-in. Caleb met him halfway down the porch steps. You've got no claim here. The foreclosure cleared your end. The trust locks the rest. You're finished. Nick smiled faintly. Paper says one thing. Flesh says another. Your uncle gave his word. His word runs thin. He nodded toward the barn. Maybe we take collateral. Cows, machinery. Something with value. Caleb's jaw set. You'll take nothing off this land. The 2 men stepped forward, testing his resolve. Roy burst through the door then, voice shaking. Stop. I'll get you what you need. Just leave the farm alone. Nick turned to him, amused. What exactly do you still have to give? Roy faltered, glancing back at Caleb, then down at his trembling hands. I'll find it. I swear. Just not here. Caleb's voice cut through. There is no more. Every lie, every scrap you promised is gone. You're standing on the last thing left, and it's not yours to sell. Nick studied him for a long moment, then chuckled softly. Strong words. But men like your uncle, men like him always find something else to gamble. And when they do, we'll be waiting. He gestured, and his men stepped back. The trucks rumbled, turning in the gravel, spitting dust as they left. But the warning lingered in the air, thicker than the exhaust. Roy collapsed onto the porch steps, head in his hands. They'll never stop, he whispered. You don't get it. They'll bleed me dry until nothing's left but bones. Caleb stood over him, voice steady but hard. Then maybe it's time you let them bleed you, not this land. You've dragged enough here already. Roy lifted his face, pale and desperate. You just watch them take me? I'd watch you face what you built, Caleb said. Because if you don't, we'll lose more than land. We'll lose everything our family ever stood for. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the yard. Roy rocked forward, silent tears cutting lines down his face. Caleb turned back toward the barn, every step heavy. He could feel the choice closing in around them, the moment when words would no longer be enough. That night, the farmhouse was restless. Every creak of wood, every groan of the wind sounded like a truck rolling up the drive. Caleb lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his father's letter replaying in his mind. Protect the farm. It's yours to guard. Down the hall, Roy whispered into the dark. bargaining with men who weren't there. And outside, under the dim glow of the porch light, the farm waited, silent and tense, knowing the storm was far from over. Dawn brought no calm. The sky was a pale sheet, empty of color, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Caleb rose early, but Roy was already gone from the guest room. The bed was unmade, curtains fluttering in the cool wind through an open window. Caleb's gut tightened. He searched the house, then spotted fresh tracks in the gravel drive, boot prints leading toward the road. By mid-morning, Earl called from town. "Saw your uncle near the lounge again," he said carefully. Looked like he was carrying something heavy. Caleb, it didn't look good. Caleb hung up without replying, his throat tight. He knew Roy hadn't learned. He knew where this path ended. Hours later, the farmhouse door burst open. Roy stumbled in, wild-eyed, sweat beading on his forehead. In his arms was a small box, wrapped in an old quilt. He dropped it on the table with a thud, chest heaving. "They said this would cover it," he panted. "This will buy us out for good." Caleb unwrapped the quilt slowly. Inside lay his grandmother's silver, polished pieces still shining faintly from years of careful care. Caleb froze. He went through her chest. Roy's eyes burned with feverish desperation. "She want us safe. She'd understand. It's just metal, Caleb. They'll take it, and we'll be free." Caleb's voice cut sharp. "It's not yours. It was never yours. You keep stealing from the dead to pay for mistakes you keep making." Roy slammed his fist on the table. "What else do you want me to do? They'll kill me if I don't deliver something. You want that blood on your porch." Caleb leaned in, his face inches from Roy's. "I want you to stop pretending you can bargain with wolves. Every time you feed them, they come back hungrier." The silver glinted between them, cold and accusing. Roy's breath hitched, his bravado cracking. "I can't do nothing. I can't just wait for them to come." "You already made that choice," Caleb said, voice low. "The second you handed them your house, your heirlooms, your dignity. The only thing left is whether you keep dragging me with you." For the first time, Roy's defiance faltered. His eyes filled, his shoulders sagged. He looked like a man who had run until his legs gave out. "I don't know how to stop," he whispered. Caleb stared at him, the silver between them, the envelope upstairs in his desk, his father's words etched into memory. "Protect the farm. You start by admitting you lost," Caleb said. "Not just the land. Everything." Roy lowered his gaze, his body trembling. "And if they don't care about words? Then I'll be here," Caleb answered. "Not for you, for this land. For what's left." The weight of it filled the room, pressing against the walls. Roy sank into the chair, defeated but not finished. Caleb gathered the silver, locking it in the desk where it belonged. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain. The storm that had been circling was drawing closer. Caleb knew the next time Nick came, there would be no talk of promises or extensions. And Roy knew, deep down, that his last gamble had already failed. The storm broke just after sunset. Wind rattled the shutters, rain lashed against the windows, and thunder rolled low across the ridge. Caleb stood at the window, watching sheets of water blur the pasture. The farmhouse felt taut, like a bowstring drawn to its limit. Roy sat hunched at the table, eyes bloodshot, muttering to himself. Every flash of lightning showed his face more gaunt, more hollow. The silver was gone from sight, locked where Caleb had hidden it, but the memory of it sat between them like a wound that wouldn't close. Headlights split the storm. A black sedan crawled up the drive, followed by a truck. Gravel crunched, engines idled. Caleb's chest tightened, but he didn't move. Roy shot up from the chair, panic flooding his voice. "They're here." Nick stepped out first, rain plastering his jacket to his shoulders. Two men followed, unfazed by the storm. They walked with the certainty of men who knew fear worked faster than fists. Nick's voice carried through the rain. "Evening, gentlemen." Caleb opened the door before they could knock. "This ends tonight." Nick smirked, water dripping from his hair. "Good. I was hoping you'd say that." He stepped inside, boots muddying the floor. His men fanned out, one leaning on the counter, the other at the door. Roy stumbled forward, hands shaking. "I brought something. Silver. Family pieces. Worth plenty." His voice cracked, pleading. "Take it. Just leave us be." Nick raised an eyebrow. Silver buys drinks, not freedom. You've been stringing me too long, Roy. His gaze shifted to Caleb. And you, playing guardian with papers and stamps. Brave. But paper burns. Caleb's voice was steady. So do men who think they own what isn't theirs. This farm is locked tighter than you realize. Nick chuckled low. You think I care about deeds? What matters is leverage. And I've got plenty. His eyes cut back to Roy. Your uncle heroes more than he can count. We collect one way or another. Roy dropped to his knees, rainwater dripping from his coat. Please, just one more chance. I'll find something else. Caleb stepped between them. There's nothing left. You've taken his house. You'll take no more from here. Nick's smile faded. For the first time, his eyes sharpened with irritation. You think you can draw a line? Lines are easy to cross in the dark. Caleb didn't flinch. Then cross mine. See what happens. The storm rattled the walls, lightning splitting the sky. Nick's men shifted, uneasy at Caleb's calm. Nick studied him, then laughed softly. Strong. I'll give you that. He leaned close, voice a whisper that cut through the thunder. But strength won't keep your uncle breathing. Roy whimpered, clutching Caleb's sleeve. Don't let them, please. Caleb's eyes didn't leave Nick's. He lives or dies by his choices. Not mine. The words landed heavy. Roy froze, staring at him, betrayed and broken. Nick tilted his head, intrigued. Maybe you're smarter than him after all. He straightened, flicked water from his fingers, and signaled his men. Not tonight, but soon. Think on that. They filed out, the storm swallowing them. Engines roared, tires spat gravel, and the headlights vanished into rain. Silence collapsed over the farmhouse. Roy sat crumpled on the floor, chest heaving, eyes wide with terror. Caleb shut the door, locking it against the storm, his face unreadable. The line had been drawn. Next time, there would be no warnings. The storm passed by dawn, leaving the fields drenched and the air sharp with the smell of wet earth. The farmhouse, though quiet, carried the weight of what had unfolded. Caleb hadn't slept. He sat at the table, his father's letter unfolded again, words etched deeper with every reading. Protect the farm. It's yours to guard. Upstairs, Roy stirred fitfully, nightmares breaking through in hoarse mutters. When he finally descended, his face was pale, hair plastered with sweat. He avoided Caleb's eyes, shuffling to the coffee pot like a man already half broken. They'll be back, Roy whispered. His hands trembled as he poured, spilling dark liquid across the counter. Next time, they won't just talk. Caleb folded the letter, sliding it back into the envelope. Then we prepare. Roy's head jerked up, startled. Prepare? You can't fight them. They don't play fair. They don't need to, Caleb said. They need weakness. And that's what you keep giving them. Roy flinched, shame and anger tangling in his eyes. I never meant for it to get this far. You meant every card you played, Caleb replied. And every lie you told. He opened the file box, pulling out the trust papers and the deed his father had tucked away. He placed them on the table with deliberate care. This land is sealed. Irrevocable. They can't touch it. But that doesn't mean they won't try. Roy stared at the documents, then back at Caleb. His voice cracked. You had this all along. You knew I'd fail. I knew you'd gamble, Caleb said, voice low. Dad knew too. That's why he left this with me. Not to shame you, just to make sure the land survived you. Roy slumped into a chair, covering his face with both hands. Then what about me? Do I just draw while you guard dirt and papers? Caleb's tone softened, but only slightly. You've got 30 days. That was the deal. Use them to get clean, or use them to drown. That choice is yours. The wind rattled the windows. Roy lifted his face, streaked with tears. They'll kill me, Caleb. You think I don't know that? Nick isn't bluffing. When he comes back, I'll be gone. Then you face him, Caleb said. You look him in the eye and own what you did. For once in your life, you stop making me pay for your mistakes. Roy's breathing grew ragged. His gaze fell on the envelope again, that single sheet of his brother's foresight. It was as if the words on the page had sentenced him long before he walked into this mess. Caleb rose, pushing back his chair. I'm done covering for you. This farm will stand because I stood for it. You want to live? Then stand for yourself. He left Roy sitting at the table, shoulders hunched, eyes hollow. Upstairs, Caleb placed the letter back in the desk drawer, locking it with the same care he gave to closing a barn door against the storm. Through the window, he watched the road, the one Nick's sedan had crawled down nights before. He knew it wouldn't be long. The farm wasn't just under siege from debts. It was the last battleground for what little honor remained in their family. And when Nick came again, Caleb would be ready. The air felt too still that night, as if even the crickets knew to stay silent. Caleb sat on the porch, lantern glowing beside him, his father's watch ticking in his palm. Each second was heavy, marking time towards something inevitable. The sound came just after midnight, engines on the gravel road. Headlights swept across the pasture, then cut sharp as two vehicles pulled up the drive. Caleb rose, steady, shoulders square. Roy stumbled out of the doorway behind him, face pale, lips trembling. "They're here," he whispered, voice broken. Nick stepped from the sedan, flanked by 3 men this time. Their boots crunched wet gravel as they approached, confidence cold and practiced. Nick's eyes gleamed in the lantern light. "Evening, Caleb. Told you we'd come back." Caleb didn't move. "Then let's finish it." Nick smirked. "Smart man. Your Uncle O's. He's out of tricks. So unless you've got something new." "I do," Caleb cut in. He pulled the envelope from his jacket and held it up. "My father left this. The farm is locked by trust, backed by deed. It can't be sold, can't be borrowed, can't be touched." Nick's eyes narrowed. "Paper." He snapped his fingers, and one of his men stepped forward, reaching. Caleb didn't flinch. "Paper that makes your claim worthless," Caleb said firmly. "You can circle this place every night for a year, and you'll still own nothing but Roy's lies. The land is beyond you." Roy's voice cracked. "Please, Nick. I'll find something else." "Shut up," Nick snapped, finally losing his calm. He stepped closer, face inches from Roy's. "You bled us dry with promises. You think hiding behind him saves you." Caleb's voice cut through, hard as iron. "This ends with him, not the farm. You want payment? Take the man who made the debt. Leave what never belonged to you." The words hung in the wet night. For the first time, Nick hesitated. His men shifted, restless. Roy sagged, realization crashing over him. Caleb wasn't shielding him anymore. Nick studied Caleb, then barked a low laugh. "Cold. Maybe colder than me." He turned to Roy, eyes sharp. "Your nephew just signed you over." Roy dropped to his knees, shaking. "Caleb, don't, please." Caleb's face stayed unreadable. "You had every chance. You chose this. I'm choosing the farm." Nick nodded once, satisfied. He motioned to his men. "Get him." They hauled Roy up, his voice breaking into desperate sobs. "I didn't mean it. Caleb, I was trying to save us." Caleb's jaw clenched, but he didn't move. He held his father's watch tight, its ticking steady as his resolve. Nick stopped at the edge of the porch, leaning close. "You're clean now. No more visits. Your trust saved your dirt. His debt pays our bill." He smirked. "Fair trade." The vehicles rumbled away, Roy's cries swallowed by the night. Gravel settled. Silence fell. Caleb stood alone on the porch, rain beginning to fall again, soft and cold. He lifted his father's letter from his pocket, unfolding it under the lantern. The words blurred through the water, but he didn't need to read them. He knew them by heart. "Protect the farm. It's yours to guard." He looked out at the dark fields, the orchards, the barns standing strong against the storm. The land was safe. The family broken. Closing the envelope, Caleb whispered into the night, "It ends here." And for the first time in years, the farm felt still, scarred but unshaken.